Get her out of my cabin. She doesn't look like a first-class passenger. The words echoed like judgment over intercom static. Captain Claire Nolan didn't whisper. She didn't question. She commanded. Across from her, a black woman stood quietly in seat 2A. Jeans, plain black t-shirt, boarding pass in hand, calm as still water. But this wasn't just any passenger. This was Amara Tate, founder of Starist Ventures and owner of the very jet Claire stood on. Except Claire didn't know that. She didn't bother to check. Because she didn't need evidence. She had bias. And in 30 minutes, the woman Claire tried to erase would dismantle her entire crew by name, by record, and by authority. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a test. And Amara had written the answer key. Before we dive into this story, comment below where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss these powerful stories of quiet justice and real accountability. At 2:10 a.m., Amara Tate boarded her own Gulfstream G650 through the private terminal in Chicago. No red carpet, no entourage, no announcement. Just her plain clothes, clean face boarding pass printed internally by her own team. It wasn't vanity. It was strategy. She didn't want to be seen as a CEO tonight. She wanted to be seen the way too many were, as someone the system didn't trust. The terminal whispered with polished silence. The scent of cold eucalyptus hung in the air. Corporate luxury. Her heels clicked. Once, then stopped. Because someone else moved first. Captain Claire Nolan. Out of place, standing near the boarding door, scanning every passenger, not with professionalism, but with predetermined suspicion. When her eyes landed on Amara, her stance hardened. "You have proof of premium status," she snapped. "No good evening, no welcome, just challenge." Amara steady-handed over the boarding pass. Claire examined it like it was fake, snorted, tossed it on the counter beside her. "You're not on the verified list. Step aside." Amara remained calm. "I'm seated in 2A. Not anymore." That line cut through the hallway like ice. Several passengers in line turned their heads. Amara didn't move, didn't blink. Across the boarding ramp, Edward Vance, a sharply dressed white man in 2B, saw the exchange, smirked, then reached over and grabbed Amara's briefcase from the empty seat beside her. He dropped it at her feet. "Don't clutter first class," he muttered. "This isn't the subway." No one objected. Not yet. Claire folded her arms and stared Amara down. "We don't have time for confusion. Please exit until we can verify your status." Amara raised her phone. "Tara," she said calmly. "Start Protocol 6. On the other end, Tara Lynn responded instantly. "Ready and waiting, ma'am." Still, Amara didn't raise her voice. She simply stepped aside and allowed the cruelty to keep digging its own grave. 26-year-old freelance journalist Jade Parker sat across the aisle watching. She leaned to her seatmate. "She didn't do anything wrong," she whispered. "They're just assuming." Edward overheard. "It's called private aviation. There are standards." Amara turned to him, voice smooth. "Say that again." Edward chuckled. "Try economy. That's more your level." He scribbled something on a torn sheet of his notepad and flicked it toward her tray table. Jade caught a glimpse. "Try economy," she read aloud. Amara picked it up, folded it, and placed it in the seat pocket without a word. Claire's voice rose again. "You're holding up the flight. This isn't some charity." Amara looked at her. "You'll want to take that tone back. Because in a few minutes, the person you're trying to remove will be the one removing you." Claire tilted her head. "Is that a threat?" "No," Amara said. "It's a timeline." Lily Marsh. The assigned flight attendant peeked from the galley. "She's not verified." "I checked. No one had seen her check anything. Amara spoke into the phone again. Tara, begin audio log. Capture all dialogue from this point forward. Already logging, Tara replied. Passengers began to shift. Quietly. Not dramatically. Just the subtle tension of watching something tip. Claire narrowed her eyes. You're not scanned, not listed, not cleared. This is your final warning. Amara nodded. Then let the record show you were warned too. Edward leaned over again. You people always make it a scene. Jade stood. No, you make it a scene. She's just standing there. Claire turned to her. Ma'am, sit down. No, Jade replied. This is a bias matter. Amara glanced at her. Thank you. I saw everything Jade said. So did everyone else. Claire didn't flinch. She turned toward the cockpit. Get her out of here. She ordered, her voice sharp, authoritative, not even looking at anyone in particular. Amara didn't move. She looked at Claire with the kind of calm that unnerves tyrants, the kind of stillness that says, I know exactly how this ends. Then came the ripple. A low voice from row 5. An older black man, quiet but resolute. I've seen this before, he said. Different gate. Same game. Claire barked. Let's not turn this into something it isn't. It already is, Amara replied. Edward threw in one last jab. She's probably ground crew, lost and confused. Amara didn't even turn to him. She simply whispered, Tara log Edward Vance's remarks as verbal misconduct. Record tone and content, logged Tara said. Then, the cabin lights dimmed. Not by accident, by signal. Amara's call had triggered a digital shadow protocol across the aircraft's internal systems. A high-priority compliance check reserved for owners had quietly activated. In the cockpit, First Officer Brian Holt's control screen flickered. Across it flashed a notification, Protocol 6 engaged, owner oversight active. Brian froze. He looked up toward the cabin, then toward Claire. Captain, he said slowly, we may have a situation. Brian Holt squinted at the cockpit display. The notification blinked again. Protocol 6 engaged. Owner oversight active. His thumb hovered over the screen. This wasn't standard. This wasn't crew-initiated. This was owner-level intervention, and it had just been triggered mid-boarding. He turned back toward the main cabin. Amara was still standing near seat 2A, phone in hand, voice low. Across from her, Captain Claire Nolan was doubling down. She's not scanned. She's not in the system. Security has been notified, Claire declared, projecting authority to the entire cabin. Not one check had occurred. No tablet verification. No manifest scroll. Just assumption and action. Amara remained motionless. Jade Parker stood near her, seat voice rising. I've seen her boarding pass. I watched you throw it. Claire ignored her. This is a security matter. Non-compliance with boarding protocol can result in removal. Brian appeared from the cockpit, rubbing his temple. What's going on? He asked. She's claiming 2A without verification, Claire answered quickly. Brian didn't ask for proof. He didn't look at Amara. He simply nodded. Call security then. The air shifted. Again. Jade stared at him. Are you kidding me? She hasn't moved, hasn't yelled, hasn't even sat down. Another voice emerged. Older. From the back. I've seen this game before, said the black man in row 5. They dress it in policy, but it's just judgment. Claire waved him off. This isn't personal. Let's not escalate it. It escalated, Amara said softly. The moment you judged me by what I wasn't wearing. Edward Vance chuckled. Oh, she's a poet now. Amara didn't look at him. Tara, she said into the phone ad. Edward's remarks to misconduct log. Verbal tone dismissive. Content demeaning. Logged Tara replied without emotion. Passengers looked between the figures in the aisle, Claire rigid, Amara calm. Jade outraged, Edward amused. Then, a new voice, timid, young, from near the rear. I wasn't scanned either. Claire turned sharp. What the speaker? A black woman in her early 20s, stylish, nervous, seated near the lavatory. I was told I was on the manifest, she stammered. No one checked me. Claire narrowed her eyes. What's your name, Sana Miles? Amara turned her head slowly. Sana, the woman blinked. Yes, you had a meeting in Atlanta yesterday, correct, with a private client. Custom necklace line. Sana's eyes widened. How did you? I read your profile, Amara said gently. I invited you on this flight. Sana looked stunned. You did. Amara turned back to Claire. Tell me again, who's not verified? Brian's mouth parted slightly. The cabin froze. Then a second surprise. Jade gasped. Wait, she invited her. Sana nodded slowly, visibly shaking. I got an email. I thought it was a scam at first, but then I confirmed it, Amara said. Claire looked between them. Ryan Cole, the Starist security lead, entered from the rear. We've received a report of unauthorized boarding, he said, tablet in hand. Claire pointed. Seat 2A. That's her. Ryan approached Amara. Ma'am, I'll need to see identification. Amara didn't flinch. State the specific violation. You're not scanned, Ryan replied, glancing down. No verification. Jade shot up again. She had a pass, I saw it. You tossed it. Ryan looked at Claire. She stiffened. She refused protocol. She complied, Jade said. You refused to look. Sana stood up. I didn't scan either. Does that mean I'm unverified too? Sit down, Claire barked. You're not involved. She is now, Amara said, because your behavior made her a suspect. Ryan's eyes flicked between the women. Then came the twist. Amara turned to Sana. Do you remember your scholarship letter from last year? Sana nodded. From the Starist Equity Fund. That was my fund, Amara said. Whispers spread. Amara continued. I tracked your portfolio after you graduated. I reached out because I believe in how you see the world. I didn't know, Sana said softly. I never imagined you weren't supposed to, Amara replied. I wanted to see if you'd be treated like you belonged. The cabin fell silent. Claire's face paled. You did this on purpose, she asked. I did this for the truth, Amara said. And the truth is exactly what you're showing me. Jade stepped closer to Sana, gently holding her elbow. You're safe, she whispered. Sana's lip trembled. Ryan's voice cut in quieter this time. Captain, we may need to pause. Claire shook her head. She's challenging flight command. That's grounds for removal. Brian blinked. Wait. Challenging what? Amara's voice was clear. Ryan, I'm invoking owner override. The room stopped breathing. Ryan froze. Ma'am, you heard me. I am Amara Tate, founder and CEO of Starist Ventures. I own this aircraft, every crew contract, every operational policy. And you're out of line. Claire stumbled back. Brian looked like the floor had just tilted. Sana sat down, eyes wide. Jade whispered, She owns the plane. And Edward Vance. He finally went silent. Silence followed Amara's declaration, like a storm's calm eye. I own this aircraft, every crew contract, every operational policy, she repeated, and you're out of line. Claire's hand clenched around the galley edge. Her jaw locked as if sheer defiance could rebuild the control she just lost. No, she snapped. That's impossible. You're bluffing. Amara didn't move. Didn't need to. Tara, she said into the phone. Confirm authority. Tara's voice came through cool and clinical. Confirmed. CEO Tate. Full Starist Aviation Authority. All ownership credentials verified. Live compliance log now visible to verified cabin display units. At the front of the aircraft, the crew console lit up red header bold type. Starist compliance override. Protocol 6E engaged. Logged by CEO Amara Tate incident. Discriminatory conduct. Obstruction of boarding protocol, unauthorized assumption of command tone by Captain Nolan. Ryan Cole backed one step away from Amara. His fingers hovered above his tablet, reading the log streaming in real time. Claire barked. "Those systems can be manipulated. This is fake." "No," Ryan murmured. "It's coming from executive compliance. These logs are real-time and corporate-level encrypted." Brian Holt, still standing awkwardly near the cockpit, blinked hard. "Wait. The system's—" Confirming, Tara Amara said calmly, "Transmit live compliance log to in-cabin screen. Passenger view mode." "Broadcasting now," Tara confirmed. The central display, usually reserved for flight maps and safety announcements, flickered. Lines of text rolled down visible to every passenger incident 01. Claire Nolan denies boarding verification, fails to check manifest. Incident 02. Lily Marsh confirms passenger as non-premium without scan. Incident 03. Verbal misconduct from Edward Vance recorded and timestamped. Incident 04. Failure to respond to boarding verification scan request. Incident 05. Manual override of protocol by CEO confirmed. One by one, the receipts lit up. Undeniable, untouchable, unspinnable. Jade gasped aloud. "Oh my God, we're watching it live." The older man in row 5 leaned forward. "Never seen anything like this in 30 years flying." Claire paled. "This isn't procedure. This is a setup." Amara remained still. "You don't recognize fairness," she said. "So when it shows up in your space, you call it sabotage." Claire turned to Ryan. "You're just going to stand there. Let her do this." Ryan looked at Amara, then at the screen. "She's not doing this. The system is. I'm just here, watching it with everyone else." Edward Vance muttered, "Well, this is getting theatrical." Amara finally turned toward him. "Mr. Vance," she said smoothly, "please open your passenger file using your client badge." He blinked. "Excuse me, swipe it." He hesitated. Jade added, "Go ahead. Let's all see who you are." With reluctant hands, Edward reached for the badge clipped to his breast pocket and waved it over the nearest NFC reader by the seatback display. A profile popped up. Edward Vance, Client Tier Guest Affiliate. Not verified charter member access level conditional premium complaints. 2 unresolved incidents from prior flights, passenger profiling, and verbal misconduct. The cabin gasped. Sana clutched her armrest. Jade stepped back. "You're not even real first class." Edward's face flushed. "That's private. That's not authorized." Amara raised one brow. "Incorrect. You authorized terms of full passenger transparency under Clause 5.2 when you used a temporary digital charter voucher." Claire's voice cracked. "This is abuse of systems." "No," Amara said. "This is the system working finally." Then, without turning, she added, "Tara submit provisional crew review recommendation. Include Nolan Marshholt and Cole under active evaluation." "Recommendation submitted," Tara confirmed. "Flight control has acknowledged. Regional HR notified." Brian swallowed hard. Claire stared at Amara. "You're power tripping. Just because you bought your way into this business, I didn't buy silence." Amara interrupted. "I built something to expose it." Suddenly, Lily emerged from the galley, holding her earpiece. "Corporate is on the line. They want to speak to command, not owner." Ryan glanced at Amara, then stepped forward. "Command is suspended. There is no functional captain. CEO authority is in effect." Claire barked. "This is mutiny," No Jade said. "This is what accountability looks like," Sana whispered. I've never seen anyone do this. Amara turned slightly. That's the problem. You should have seen it long ago. Then came the sharpest twist. Another display lit up. A diagram of incident history from the aircraft. Flagged passengers, 22. Complaints ignored, 15 manual deletions, 6 crew access, ID Nolan Marsh. The data rolled live. Passengers gasped. 15 ignored and said aloud. On this plane, Ryan's lips moved, but no sound came. Amara exhaled slowly. Tara, escalate to full oversight. Activate Owner Directive Level 2. Confirmed. Tara replied. This flight is now under full ethics audit. No departures authorized. New crew requested. Claire staggered. You've killed this flight, she said. You've embarrassed everyone. No, Amara replied. I've made it impossible for anyone like you to fly unchecked again. The silence in the cabin felt metallic, pressurized. Everyone had heard the logs. Everyone had seen the names. And yet, Claire Nolan still stood tall, still defiant. This is still my aircraft, she declared. Amara didn't respond immediately. She turned toward the cockpit. Ryan, she said. Not raising her voice escort, Captain Nolan to the forward jump seat. She is relieved of command, effective now. Ryan hesitated. Claire barked. Don't you dare. He looked at the cockpit panel, still glowing red with the override signal. Then, reluctantly, he stepped forward. Captain, I'm going to need you to comply. Claire stepped back. This is illegal. No, Amara said this is protocol. The one you thought you were above. Ryan reached gently, but firmly, for Claire's arm. You're finished, Claire hissed. No, Amara said calmly. You are. Passengers held their breath. Jade stood slowly. Sana watched eyes wide. Claire made one last attempt to regain power. She turned toward the passengers. You're all being misled, she shouted. She's faking this. It's an act. No one spoke. Then from the back, a man rose, gray-haired, weathered, dignified. He walked slowly up the aisle, every step deliberate. Amara's gaze lifted. The man stopped halfway between rows. He held his pilot cap in one hand, his ID badge in the other. My name is Douglas Merrick, he said clearly. Former Captain Horizon Air. 32 years of service. The cabin stilled. Douglas turned to face Claire. I trained Claire Nolan 15 years ago. I filed 2 misconduct concerns about her behavior in that first year. Both were dismissed. Quietly. Claire's face paled. Amara looked at him gently. You were one of the first. Douglas nodded. I was told I was too sensitive, that I was misinterpreting her comments about certain passengers. I let it go. I shouldn't have. He looked around. I sat silent when I saw the first girl forced off a plane for being overdressed for economy. I said nothing when a young black man with a tech badge was delayed because he didn't look corporate enough. I thought keeping peace meant keeping quiet. He looked directly at Claire again. But I watched tonight, and everything I warned them about is standing right there. Claire muttered, You're bitter. No, Douglas said I'm done being quiet. Applause didn't erupt. It wasn't the moment for that. But what did spread was a collective nod, an invisible shift, where one passenger after another straightened their backs. One by one, they joined the moment. Jade whispered, He just took off her mask. Sana, whispering, said, And she's got nowhere to hide. Ryan turned to Amara. Do I proceed? Yes, she said firmly. Seat her. Log her command as suspended. Notify FAA oversight. Tara's voice clicked through the phone. Already notified. FAA digital response received. Officer on standby to debrief crew on landing. Ryan gently but firmly led Claire to the forward jump seat. Her fists were clenched. Her mouth trembled with the words she didn't dare speak. Edward muttered from his seat. This is insane. You're dismantling the crew mid-air. Amara turned slowly. You dismantled trust the moment you touched my bag without permission. He scoffed. Over a bag, no. Over a pattern you thought no one was watching. Amara turned to Lily Marsh next. The flight attendant had retreated to the galley eyes, darting nervously. Ms. Marsh, Amara said evenly. Did you scan my boarding pass? Lily stammered. I didn't see it. Claire said you weren't on the manifest. I was told. Did you confirm yourself I was going to? Lily lied. Tara Amara said, does crew logs show? Boarding scan by flight attendant Marsh for seat 2A. Tara responded instantly. No scan initiated. No verification attempt. Manifest was overridden manually using command credentials Nolan's ID. The trap was closed. Passengers were visibly shaken. Sana's voice quivered. They didn't just target you. They erased you. Jade whispered. They did it to others too. How many were never seen? Then came the next twist. Tara's voice returned. CEO compliance servers just received historical logs from prior months. Same override pattern occurred on this aircraft 4 times each, linked to passengers flagged non-premium and dismissed without due scan. Amara looked toward Lily. You participated in those flights. Lily's eyes filled with tears. I didn't log them. Claire told me they were not worth scanning. I thought it was just procedure. Amara's voice didn't harden. It softened. That's how it works. People call bias procedure long enough until even the good ones start believing it. The lights in the cabin shifted suddenly, a bit warmer. Daylight was beginning to rise beyond the fuselage windows. The passengers weren't just looking at Amara now. They were looking at themselves. Jade said, "What happens now?" Amara replied with precision. "Now we begin correction, and I'm not waiting until landing." She reached for her briefcase, pulled out a thin folder. Inside, 4 documents. She held them up one at a time. Crew termination letter. Claire Nolan. Crew suspension order. Lily Marsh. FAA compliance violation statement. Brian Holt. Internal ethics alert. Ryan Cole. This aircraft has violated trust, and tonight that ends. One by one, she signed each page. The pen didn't shake. It carved. And for the first time, the cabin believed her, not because of her voice, but because of what she was finally undoing. Amara's pen made the final stroke on the suspension order. Her signature, fluid and decisive, settled the matter. She stood in the aisle now, not a passenger, not even just a CEO, but as a figure reshaping what flight accountability looked like in real time. Claire sat in the forward jump seat, lips trembling with fury, wrists pressed into her knees like a coiled spring. She hadn't spoken since being escorted, but the fight in her eyes still burned. Across the cabin, Lily stood stiff in the galley suspension notice, trembling in her hands. Brian Holt had retreated halfway into the cockpit, as if proximity to the controls could still shield him. Ryan Cole leaned silently against the panel, his name already on an ethics alert list, his eyes avoiding everyone. The rest of the cabin divided. Some whispered. Others stared. And some, like Edward Vance, still clung to the belief that all of this was theater. "Let me get this straight," he said loudly. "You're turning a flight into a courtroom." Jade didn't even look at him. "No. She's turning it into a reckoning." Edward snorted. "You can't run a company like this. This is personal vengeance." Amara stepped toward him, measured and poised. "You think this is personal," she said. "You touched my belongings. You lied about my credentials. You mocked my identity. And now you're upset that I didn't stay quiet." He shrugged. "I have opinions." "No," she corrected, "you have entitlement." The line lingered in the air like static. Then a voice from row 7 rose, unexpected, calm and heavy. Actually, the voice said she's not the first you've treated like this. All eyes turned. A man in his 40s stood up. Clean cut. Business casual. Quiet face. "I'm Malcolm Jones," he said. 2 years ago, I boarded a Starist charter to Phoenix. I had a confirmed upgrade. When I got to my seat, Captain Nolan herself told me to go to the back. She said there was a technical mix-up. He looked directly at Claire. "You stared at my shoes instead of my ticket. Then you gave my seat to someone else who looked a lot more like you." Claire blinked. "I've flown thousands of passengers. I don't remember you." "You're not supposed to remember," Malcolm said. "That's the pattern." The cabin went silent again. Malcolm held up his phone. "I filed a complaint, got an apology voucher, but I was never contacted by ethics." He turned to Amara. "Now I know why. She was intercepting them." Tara's voice chimed through Amara's earpiece. "Confirming incident record flight ST-4125 2 years ago. Complaint filed under Malcolm Jones. Status, resolved verbally." Internal routing shows manual suppression by crew credentials, Captain Nolan. Gasps. "Audible now," Jade whispered. "They've been covering this for years." Sana near the back pressed her hands to her face. Amara looked toward Tara. How many like his were suppressed? Tara responded 17 linked complaints under Claire Nolan. 7 escalated. None formally acknowledged. 6 passengers were offered travel vouchers. 0 initiated follow-up contact. Edward muttered, "You're combing through 2 years of data mid-flight." "That's absurd. No Jade cut in. That's called infrastructure. Something you wouldn't understand." Ryan finally spoke. "Ma'am." Amara turned to him. "I want to cooperate," he said. "But what's happening now, it's going to be a media storm." She nodded. "Good. Let them watch what justice looks like in sequence." He blinked. "I'm not here to destroy reputations," she added. "I'm here to repair systems." Then she stepped to the front of the cabin. Addressed the passengers directly. "If you have ever experienced discrimination dismissal or silent disrespect on a Starist flight, this is your moment. You're not invisible. You're not alone." Malcolm nodded. "This is the first time I've felt seen since it happened." Then another hand went up an older woman near the exit row. "Flight 901 to Denver," she said softly. "I was told I didn't look like I had elite status. I never told anyone." Amara nodded. "Now you have," Jade added. "This is bigger than one seat." "Yes," Amara said. "This is about who gets to fly without fear of being questioned." Another voice joined. A Latino teenager traveling with his mother. "We were almost left behind once because they didn't believe our last name was on the manifest," he said. It was Nolan that day, too. Tara confirmed again. That incident exists in crew chatter logs, marked delayed due to passenger confusion. Suppression again logged. By now, the air wasn't heavy, it was electric. Passengers had gone from observers to witnesses to participants. Claire finally snapped. "Stop this," she growled. "You're tearing down everything we built." "No," Amara said, stepping toward her. "You built walls. I'm opening doors." And then came the twist that dropped jaws. Douglas Merrick, the retired pilot, spoke again. "I knew about the suppression. I flagged it. My report was buried too. I used to think, maybe I overreacted." Amara looked at him. "You didn't." Douglas's voice cracked. "Then let me testify. If this goes to formal hearing, I want to be the first to speak." She nodded once. "You will." The walls of silence that had once shielded Starist's crew from accountability were crumbling fast. Amara remained at the front of the cabin, her voice calm but unshakable, fielding story after story from passengers who had never planned to speak. Each word chipped away at the structure Claire Nolan had relied on for years, one built not on policy, but on unchecked power. Sana sat quietly, fingers laced tight in her lap. Douglas Merrick, the retired pilot, stood steady in the aisle, arms crossed, a veteran of skies who had never once raised his voice until now. And Claire. She stared straight ahead, jaw set, the illusion of control slipping from her with every breath. Lily Marsh, on the other hand, was breaking. She sat slumped near the galley, no longer hiding her panic. Her voice cracked as she muttered to herself. "I thought we'd get away with it," Amara heard. "Get away with what, Ms. Marsh?" she asked, eyes narrowed. Lily looked up. Her face was red, her hands trembling. The audit logs. The ones Claire told me to delete after the January inspection. Jade gasped. "Wait, you deleted records?" Lily nodded, visibly unraveling. She said they'd just confuse corporate, that they were just misunderstandings. She said it wasn't real misconduct, just overreactions. Amara turned toward the forward display. "Tara," she said, voice low and surgical, "verify whether any audit deletions were logged from this crew ID." Tara responded after a beat. Confirmed. January 12, 3:41 a.m. Crew ID Marsh manually deleted 12 compliance entries. Backup logs preserved on secure server undeletable layer enabled by executive compliance at infrastructure level. A stunned hush swept through the cabin. Jade whispered. They tried to erase everything, but Tara wasn't done. 6 of those records were complaints from minority passengers. 3 were marked urgent. 2 were repeat entries from flagged flight codes. Final deletion attempt was overridden silently. We preserved the metadata. Amara closed her eyes for a beat processing, then opened them with fire. That means the system caught the deletion in real time. Yes, Tara confirmed. It triggered auto-archive protocol visible only to executive authority. Ryan blinked. So all this time, we had the data. But it was buried. Tara replied, "By design, to prevent internal sabotage." Malcolm Jones stood again. "Then why didn't it surface sooner?" Amara answered this one herself. "Because until now, no one with the right authority had reason to dig. But now we do." Claire finally snapped her neck around. "You're manipulating the system to make me look like a villain." Amara didn't flinch. "I'm not making you look like anything," she said coldly. "I'm simply removing the disguise you wore for too long." Then she raised her phone again. "Tara, transmit the archived metadata from Marsh's deletion log to the main cabin screen. Include timestamps, passenger IDs, anonymized, and complaint subjects. Transmitting now." The display updated. Lines of chilling content appeared. Complaint 1. Flight attendant refused to scan ID passenger profiled as suspicious based on race. Complaint 2. Seated passenger told to move for true elite client without explanation. Complaint 3. Crew laughed about passenger's accent recorded via onboard mic. Complaint 4. Young black woman removed from premium for looking out of place. Each one was paired with a bright red label, "Manual deletion overridden, preserved by fail-safe." Passengers were now more than shocked. They were furious. "That's criminal," one said. "They mocked accents," said another. On record, Sana spoke again. "So that's why I was scared to speak up. Because somewhere deep down, I already knew." Amara turned toward Lily again. "You didn't just delete entries. You deleted people's truth." Lily buried her face in her hands. I thought I was helping Claire." "You weren't helping her," Amara said. "You were protecting a disease inside this system." Then Tara's voice came through again, calm, but this time heavier. CEO additional anomaly discovered. In February, Claire Nolan attempted a full purge of aircraft ST-1198's compliance history. She used her command credentials during scheduled server maintenance. Amara went still. "That's this aircraft," confirmed. Tara replied. Jade's voice cracked. "She tried to wipe this entire plane's record." "Yes," said Tara, "but the purge failed. Executive lockout saved the system. Logs from that date were encrypted and preserved." "You now have full access." Claire growled from her seat. "You shouldn't even have that data." "But I do," Amara said, "and every line leads back to you." Then came the final twist of the moment. Douglas Merrick stepped forward again. He held a tablet he had pulled from his briefcase. "This is my old incident report," he said, offering it to Jade. "I made a backup before they deleted the digital file." She read the screen. Her eyes went wide. "You flagged Claire for discriminatory seating behavior 15 years ago." He nodded, and they buried it. Jade turned to the cabin. "This is what suppression looks like." Amara said nothing more. She didn't need to, because the system had spoken, and it wasn't finished yet. No one moved. The air in the cabin, once thick with tension, was now electric with exposed truth. The passengers' crew and even the skeptics were no longer questioning if something had gone wrong. They were witnessing exactly how deeply it had been allowed to grow. Amara stood motionless in the aisle, her phone still pressed lightly to her ear. Then Tara's voice returned. "CEO new update. Office of Legal Affairs. General Counsel for Starist Ventures has been monitoring the live feed since protocol escalation. They've issued an internal bulletin." Amara raised one eyebrow. "Read it. Effective immediately. General Counsel affirms all actions taken under Owner Override Protocol 6C. Flight 7X198 is now under direct executive governance. Full legal immunity granted for real-time disciplinary measures. Additionally, Legal has issued a global freeze on all cabin crew contracts, system-wide, pending external review." Jade gasped audibly. Edward's jaw dropped. "You mean you just froze the entire airline's crew database?" Amara nodded slowly. "Not just this flight. All of them." Ryan leaned his back into the bulkhead, visibly shaken. Sana whispered, "She's not just cleaning house. She's tearing down the whole building." Passengers murmured a current of disbelief and awe rising in waves. Amara turned toward the cockpit display. Tara broadcast legal confirmation to the cabin screen. "Confirmed." Displaying. The screen flashed and updated with a direct message, Starist Legal Communique. "This aircraft is under Executive Override Authority per Contract Clause 17.4 and Federal Aviation Directive 118. Actions taken by CEO Amara Tate are legally binding. Crew dismissals, overrides, and ethical suspensions are affirmed. This ruling extends to all Starist Aviation contracts under investigation. Compliance teams have been deployed. All further actions are recorded under Executive Justice Watch 01A." For a moment, no one said anything. Then one passenger clapped, another joined, then more, until it wasn't just a ripple, it was a wave. But Amara didn't smile. She stepped forward again. "This isn't applause-worthy," she said softly. "It's accountability, and it's overdue." She turned toward Lily. "You deleted complaints, followed illegal orders, and stayed silent when your conscience screamed otherwise. Your employment ends here." Lily looked up, cheeks soaked. "I know." Claire, still restrained by the jump seat, strap scoffed. "You think you're fixing something. You're destroying morale. No one's going to want to fly under this tyranny." Amara finally turned to face her directly. "No, they're going to fly with certainty that bias will not be tolerated. They're going to walk onto planes and belong without needing to perform worthiness." She paused, then added, "You ruled by exclusion. I will lead by design." Just then, Tara's voice chimed again. CEO incoming encrypted message from General Counsel's personal line. Amara raised her phone higher. Play it. A calm but firm female voice echoed through the speaker. Ms. Tate. This is Alexis Monroe, head counsel. You have our full backing. You're authorized to execute immediate terminations. We are dispatching federal observers to Starist hubs starting at 0600. Please continue as necessary. We are with you. Let this be the turning point. Claire went pale. Brian finally broke his silence. Claire, we need to stand down. You coward, she hissed. No, he said. I'm done lying. I'm done watching. He turned to Amara. I failed you. I failed every one of these passengers. Amara nodded. Then say it clearly. He stepped forward, hands open. I, Brian Holt, acknowledge that I conspired with Captain Claire Nolan in suppressing passenger verification targeting non-white passengers for additional scrutiny and ignoring internal reports. Claire growled. You idiot. Brian ignored her. I let it happen. I was complicit. I was afraid of her rank. But that's not an excuse. I'm ready to testify to all of it. The cabin sat in stunned silence. Then Douglas Merrick, the retired pilot, nodded slowly. That's a start, Jade muttered. This isn't a flight anymore. This is a reckoning. But the biggest twist was yet to come. Tara spoke once more. CEO Internal Audit has just confirmed that Claire Nolan edited hiring algorithms for new flight crew applicants, flagging profiles from certain demographics for secondary review without cause. This change was buried in the onboarding system 6 years ago. It affected over 320 applicants. Gasps rang out. Sana clutched the seat. She was gatekeeping who even got through the door. Amara's face turned to steel. Send that to Federal HR. Include full code traces and user tags. Transmitting, Tara replied. Then Amara looked up to the passengers. My promise is simple. The next time you fly Starist, you'll know we see you. And we'll prove it with every flight, every crew, and every interaction. And with that, the power shifted entirely. Forever. As the legal communique faded from the cabin screen, the atmosphere transformed from shock to solemn clarity. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was expectant. Loaded. Like the seconds before a final verdict. Amara remained still, hands resting lightly on the seat in front of her. She hadn't sat down since the confrontation began, and she wouldn't until it was finished. Beside the galley, Lily still sat, hunched head low, the resignation letter now trembling in her hands. Brian Holt remained on his feet, shoulders sunken, but eyes clearer than before. Claire Nolan motionless in the jump seat, furious, cornered, powerless. That was when a man in seat 3C stood, tall in a dark navy suit, silver tie, quiet presence. I wasn't going to speak, he said. I figured this wasn't my moment. All eyes turned, but I need to say something. My name is Lawrence Shaw. I'm one of the institutional investors behind Starist's Series D round. A murmur swept the cabin. A backer. Here Claire turned her head sharply. You're lying. He looked at her. Calm. I have a 2.3% stake. My firm had planned to pull it. Jade narrowed her eyes. Why he looked at Amara? Because we'd heard whispers about hiring patterns, quiet cancellations, profiles of passengers being treated differently. Sana held her breath. We didn't want to believe it. Lawrence continued, but our ethics team flagged Claire's name more than once. We debated whether to pull out. Claire scoffed. You're just making this up. No, Lawrence said. I have the email drafts to prove it. We were going to file a quiet exit clause next quarter. Amara said nothing. She waited. But today, Lawrence continued. I watched something I never expected. A CEO who didn't flinch. a system that, despite being sabotaged, had been built well enough to log the truth. And a cabin of witnesses who finally said, "No more." He paused. "I've changed my mind." Jade whispered, "Wait. You're staying in Lawrence." Looked at Amara. "Ms. Tate, I'm not just staying. I'm increasing our stake. But on one condition." Amara raised an eyebrow. "Name it." "That every single reform you've implemented here today becomes permanent protocol across all Starist Division's passenger cargo charter VIP." Amara nodded. "Done?" He sat back down. Claire sneered. "You're all sheep. You think this woman's some kind of messiah." But her voice barely registered anymore. The system no longer listened to her. Suddenly, Tara chimed in again. "CEO broadcast inquiry from FAA Regional Office. They are requesting confirmation of Captain Claire Nolan's current suspension and access to the black box audio logs for this flight." Amara nodded. "Grant them full access. Live forward all internal crew chatter passenger interactions and override authorizations." "Forwarding now." Claire barked. "You can't share that without crew consent." Amara didn't even turn. Consent is irrelevant when malpractice is under investigation. Then came another twist. Tara's voice lowered slightly. "Ma'am, we've identified 6 passengers on this flight who were subjected to bias-related treatment over the past year, each on prior Starist flights." Jade turned to Sana. "You too?" Sana nodded. Amara's gaze swept the cabin. Names anonymized for now, unless they consent to reveal. One by one, hands slowly rose. Malcolm Jones, the older black woman in 6D, the Latino teen. Even a white woman in row 8 raised her hand. "They told me I didn't sound like I belonged in platinum." It wasn't a claim anymore. It was a chorus. Jade said softly, "There it is." And Amara knew. This flight wasn't just an exposure. It was a mirror reflecting what had festered beneath airline polish for years. Claire's voice cracked again. "You're not a leader. You're an executioner." "No," Amara said. "I'm a reformer, and reform only hurts when you've built your seat on someone else's silence." Then Tara delivered the final strike. "Ma'am, Ethics Division has scheduled a mandatory review hearing for Nolan Marshholt and Cole within 48 hours. All flight access revoked. Claire's pilot certification is now under suspension pending full review." Brian exhaled, eyes closed. Lily let the suspension paper drop to the floor. Claire's face twitched, but she stayed still. Amara turned once more to the cabin. "Before we land," she said, "I want every passenger here to know this moment will not vanish. We will build a new protocol based on today's events. What you said will live in policy," Jade whispered. For the first time, "I believe it," Sana said softly. This wasn't just a flight. It was a line in the sky. The cabin had transformed into something no airline training manual could have ever prepared for. This wasn't turbulence. This was justice at altitude. And at the eye of it all, Amara stood steady, not because she craved power, but because she understood the weight of it. She turned from the front of the plane and walked slowly down the aisle, her footsteps soft, deliberate, like punctuation marks following the passengers' collective silence. Sana's eyes followed her. Jade had stopped whispering. Even Edward Vance, whose sarcasm had previously poisoned the air, now sat with arms crossed, gaze lowered. He had no more lines to throw. Then Tara's voice returned, calm, but carrying something new. "Ma'am, we've just received an anonymous internal transmission, forwarded through secure compliance line. It's from a current Starist employee." Amara paused mid-aisle. "Patch it through." A text-only message appeared on the cabin display. The sender's identity was shielded, marked only Flight Ops. Level 3. Subject: Claire Nolan. Personnel manipulation and ethics violations. I've worked under Claire for 7 years. I've kept quiet out of fear, but I watched her repeatedly manipulate internal promotion reviews. She personally red-flagged applicants she called off-brand, most of them women of color, non-native English speakers, or anyone she claimed didn't present the right image. In at least 3 cases, she fabricated disciplinary events in the log system to disqualify them from internal advancement. One of them was my sister. She was removed from the cadet training roster after Claire claimed she missed a drug test which never existed. We filed quietly. Nothing happened. I never thought anyone would listen. Until now. Jade gasped. Sana covered her mouth. Amara didn't speak. She simply turned toward Claire. The woman in the jump seat looked pale, smaller than before. Her voice, usually acidic, was now thin. "That's a lie," Claire said. "Anyone can send fake messages." Tara followed instantly. Authentication confirmed. Employee is verified. Records match submitted claims. Cross-reference with prior flagged cadet files confirms suspicious log tampering under Nolan's credentials. Douglas Merrick exhaled sharply. Jade rose halfway from her seat. "You didn't just discriminate," she said. "You orchestrated sabotage." Sana's voice was barely a whisper. She blocked them before they could even fly. And then the moment shattered. A voice rose from the back of the cabin. Soft. Trembling. "I know the woman they're talking about," it said. A middle-aged black woman in a burgundy cardigan stood hands at her side. "She trained with me. Her name was Imani. She was brilliant. Calm under pressure. The kind of woman who made you feel safe at 40,000 feet. Her voice cracked. She disappeared from training 3 years ago. Said it was a family issue. But I always knew." She wiped her eyes. "Now I know why." The ripple was real. Not drama. Not spectacle. Truth. Claire gripped the seat handles so tight her knuckles went white. Amara finally broke the silence. "You didn't just suppress complaints. You engineered exclusion." Claire didn't respond. Amara turned back to Tara. "Is there a digital trail?" "Yes, ma'am. We've located 3 falsified log entries. System metadata indicates backdated timestamping and credential masking, both traceable." 2 other flagged applicants withdrew quietly. One filed a grievance that was marked resolved, with no interview on record. Malcolm Jones, seated nearby, whispered to himself, "She erased careers." Ryan, the now suspended security lead, muttered, "This goes deeper than bias." This was a power strategy. Jade turned to Claire. "You didn't want diversity. You wanted uniformity. People who looked like you, spoke like you, laughed at your jokes, stayed grateful." Claire whispered, "I did what was best for the brand." Amara walked forward again, slow and steady. "You did what was best for your comfort. Not the passengers. Not the mission. Not the future." She stopped in front of Claire. "For years, people like you have hidden behind excellence using policy like a shield to mask control. But I built Starist to raise standards, not to weaponize them." Then Tara's voice returned, flat and final. Confirmation from Legal Affairs. Claire Nolan is now under permanent suspension with recommendation for federal investigation under Equal Opportunity Aviation Act violations and obstruction of career advancement protocols. The verdict had been spoken, not by one woman, but by many. Sana said Imani deserves to fly. Jade added, "So do all the people Claire tried to bury." Amara looked out at the cabin at the quiet, exhausted strength in their faces. This wasn't the end. It was the breach before breakthrough. The silence that followed Claire's official suspension wasn't peaceful, it was thunderous. Like the sky, right before a storm finally breaks. Claire sat motionless, eyes locked on the floor, the captain's stripes on her shoulders, now just remnants of a past she no longer controlled. Around her, the passengers, many of whom had entered this flight with earbuds and briefcases, sat transfixed, as if watching a storm tear through the very architecture of the airline they trusted. Amara stepped back toward the center of the cabin, her expression calm but unyielding. Jade finally spoke. "What happens to the others, the ones who helped her?" Amara turned to Tara. Tara. Status update on every crew member who logged false reports under Claire's directives. Review in progress. Initial scan identifies 2 other captains and 1 onboarding supervisor who processed Claire's falsified data without flagging inconsistencies. 1 is still active in the Miami division. Ryan stiffened. "I know that name," he muttered. "Captain J. Mendez. We flew together once. He always said things like, 'The brand sells better without noise.' I thought it was harmless branding talk." Amara narrowed her eyes. "It never is." Then the screen behind her lit up again unexpectedly. Tara's voice returned low and urgent. "Ma'am, this wasn't us. An internal email chain has just been leaked to our live flight record. Auto-archiving caught it from the Miami Secure inbox. The screen now displayed an email dated March 17th, 2020, from SureReview StarrestGlobal.com to Internal Ethics, StarrestGlobal.com, subject, Claire Nolan. Crew behavior flags. We've reviewed the submitted complaints. While language may appear exclusionary, Captain Nolan has one of the highest efficiency ratings in the company. Her on-time metrics and charter satisfaction outweigh isolated incident claims. Recommend logging the concerns, but no further escalation. D. Renshaw, HR Performance Lead. Gasps echoed through the cabin. Jade shot up. "They knew 4 years ago," Sana whispered, "and they did nothing. Because she was efficient." Douglas Merrick closed his eyes. "This isn't just a Claire problem. It's a culture problem." Amara knotted fists, slowly clenching. They valued speed over safety, metrics over morality. Tara added further emails show repeated attempts from junior employees to reopen the file, all denied by HR, citing Claire's legacy route history and pilot retention value. Edward finally spoke again, his voice uneasy. "You mean this entire time? Executives protected her?" Amara turned toward him. "Yes, because they thought quiet discrimination was manageable as long as profits stayed clean." Then she addressed the passengers again. "Let me be clear. Silence is not neutral. Silence is complicity dressed in policy." Jade stepped forward. "What can we do?" Amara thought for a beat. Then, "Use your voice. When you fly, when you hire, when you lead. Change doesn't begin at the top. It begins when bystanders choose to become witnesses." Tara's voice returned. "Ma'am, CEO Monroe of Starrest Global just issued a statement. I'll read it." Everyone leaned in. "We at Starrest Global are monitoring the current in-flight override with full support. We were unaware of certain HR suppression tactics and are opening a formal investigation. All findings uncovered by CEO Tate will be treated as whistleblower-grade documentation. Effective immediately, HR Director D. Renshaw is placed on temporary leave." Jade smiled faintly. "You pulled the curtain back so far, the top floor had to look. But the cabin hadn't fully settled. One final twist remained." From the rear, a hand raised. It was the young Latino teen who had earlier described being questioned at boarding. He stood slowly. "Can I say something?" Amara nodded. "I almost didn't take this flight. My mom told me to stay home. She said, 'Don't risk it. They treat us like we don't belong there.' But I came anyway, because I want to be a pilot one day." Everyone stilled. "I wanted to learn by watching. I thought I'd see what power looked like on a plane. But I saw something better. He looked at Amara. I saw what courage looks like. Sana wiped her cheek. Jade whispered, "The next generation is watching." Amara stepped forward. "What's your name, Luis?" he replied. "Luis Andrade." "Luis," she said clearly. "When you're ready to apply to flight school, you let me know. Starist will sponsor it." The cabin burst into quiet applause. No cheers, just agreement. Because this wasn't about victory. It was about restoration, about legacy. The aircraft flew steady now, but not because the turbulence had passed, because truth had taken the controls. The applause faded, but something more enduring lingered in the air clarity. It wasn't over, not by a long shot. But for the first time in hours, maybe years, the foundation beneath the airline's gleaming brand had cracked open wide enough for light to get in. Amara returned to seat 2A, her original place of removal, and this time no one questioned her right to be there. Sana sat straighter. Jade exhaled her hands, finally unclenched. Even passengers who had once remained silent now watched with open respect. Not for the performance, but for the principle. Tara's voice returned in Amara's earpiece. Calm as always. "Ma'am, a new file just surfaced in the compliance database. It appears someone had been building a draft for a revised crew conduct manual. Not us. It's dated 3 weeks ago." Amara blinked. 3 weeks before today. Yes. Philiname reform. Draft. V1.7 PDF. Authored anonymously. Cross-referencing system activity now. Amara sat back, thoughtful. Someone had been planning reform internally before this flight ever took off. "Send it to my tablet," she said quietly. Tara complied. A few seconds later, the document appeared on her screen. Inside a new code of conduct outlined in 12 principles starting with this one. The cabin is not just a space of service, it is a stage of dignity. Jade leaned closer from across the aisle. "What's that?" Amara showed her the screen. "A reform draft. Made weeks ago. From who unknown." Jade tilted her head. So someone inside Starist already knew change was overdue and was preparing for it. Amara nodded. "Looks like this flight wasn't the beginning. It was the catalyst." Then her screen flashed again. Another message from Tara Mom, the author of the draft, just identified themselves. It's First Officer Jonah Wu. He's flown 218 Starist routes. No record of disciplinary action. Never promoted. His draft was never reviewed. Amara frowned. "Get me his contact." Tara responded instantly. "He's on reserve duty today. Logged into the crew app, but listed as standby. Invite him to headquarters," Amara said. "First thing tomorrow. Tell him we've read his draft and we're making it the blueprint." Tara added, "Also, I just got notice from External Affairs. FAA is adding your reforms to a best practice watch list. Other airlines are already requesting a copy of the incident summary. It's becoming bigger." Amara paused, not in surprise, but in recognition. This wasn't just about removing a captain. It was about redefining flight culture from the roots up. Just then, a soft voice came from the row behind her. Ms. Tate Amara turned. A middle-aged Asian woman traveling alone leaned forward with tear-glazed eyes. "I was denied business class last year because they said my name didn't match my appearance. I filed a report. Nothing came of it." Amara's voice was gentle. "What's your name, Grace?" "Grace Lynn." Amara smiled. "Grace, we found your file this morning. It was one of the 12 buried by Claire's override credentials." Grace covered her mouth. Jade interjected, "You're restoring more than records. You're restoring people." Amara tapped her earpiece. "Tara, flag Grace Lynn's incident for immediate apology protocol. Send her a formal letter, full refund, and lifetime premium access. Already on it." Jade looked around. We started this flight thinking it would be like any other. But now, Sana whispered, we're all in the cockpit. Amara stood again, and this time no one looked away. This isn't about elevating me, she said, voice strong. It's about elevating standards, and that work starts today. Quietly, systematically, permanently. Ryan, former security lead, raised his hand from the rear galley. I'd like to help, he said. No excuses, no requests, just service. You've already replaced me, but if there's a training program or auditing task force. Amara nodded. You'll report to Tara, but it won't be easy. I'm not asking for easy, he said. I'm asking for right. Sana turned to Grace and whispered, It's working. Jade stood beside Amara. You didn't just survive this. You made it policy. Amara shook her head gently. I didn't make it anything. You all did. Every witness, every voice, every person who said, that's not okay. This is your reform. Then Tara's voice returned once more. Ma'am, the document from Jonah Wu included a final footnote. Amara raised an eyebrow. Read it. We don't rise by serving power. We rise by protecting the dignity of strangers. The silence afterward was full, not empty, because the restoration had begun. And this time, no one would erase it. The aircraft was still in the air, but down on the ground, the earth had started to move. Amara had just sat down again reviewing Jonah Wu's reform draft when Tara's voice returned to her earpiece. But this time, it wasn't a quiet system update. Ma'am, you may want to see this. Turn on the cabin screen. Amara gestured to the cabin crew console, a flight attendant. One of the replacements Tara had dispatched during override nodded and tapped the cabin display system. The screen flickered, then switched to a live news broadcast. A reporter stood in front of the Starist Ventures headquarters in Chicago. Behind her, a growing crowd held up handmade signs. This is breaking news from downtown Chicago, where hundreds have gathered outside Starist Ventures to show support for CEO Amara Tate. Many say they were inspired by a viral clip from inside Flight 7X198, where sources claim the CEO herself intervened in an onboard discrimination incident and took direct action against the crew. The video feed cut to aerial drone footage. The headquarters plaza was covered in people diverse in age background attire. Some wore business suits, others flight crew uniforms. A few waved model airplanes in the air. And the signs. We see you, Amara. Culture. Comfort. Flight 7X198 changed everything. Amara blinked once, then looked down. Sana gasped softly. That's real. That's now, Jade muttered. They didn't wait for a press release. They responded to integrity. Edward, 2 rows behind, let out a slow breath. You've started a fire. But Amara wasn't glowing in glory. She looked focused. Tara. How did that video get out? An anonymous passenger uploaded a clip from the confrontation in row 2A. It caught the moment Claire refused to check your boarding pass, the comments about not looking first class, and your override declaration. The video hit 1.2 million views in 35 minutes. We didn't authorize it, but the public has responded overwhelmingly in support. Douglas Merrick, the retired pilot, leaned forward. They're not just watching. They're recognizing what they've experienced for years. Then came the real twist. The reporter on screen said, We're now joined live by activist and former aviation executive Letitia Harmon, who has been lobbying for reform in the airline industry for over a decade. Letitia, what's your reaction? The screen split. Letitia Harmon appeared from her home office, stern, poised, smiling slightly. My reaction. About time someone with power used it properly. I've known about Claire Nolan's name since 2016. We submitted 3 ethics complaints during her tenure in the Southern Division. Every one of them vanished. She leaned forward on screen. But Amara Tate didn't just respond. She executed change mid-air. That's not just leadership. That's precedent. The passengers inside 7X198 sat in stunned silence, watching their own flight become history in real time. Tara spoke again in Amara's ears. We've also received direct contact from the Secretary of Transportation. They're issuing a commendation of your actions and a formal request to discuss implementing similar accountability protocols across other airlines. Amara closed her eyes for a moment, not in pride, but in weight. Then she stood once more this time, walking to the front of the cabin where she could see every single passenger. I know what you're seeing on the screen, she began. But don't mistake that for a conclusion. This isn't a victory lap. Sana asked. Then what is it? Amara replied. It's a wake-up call, and not just for Starrest. For every gate agent who's ever said, you don't look like premium. For every pilot who's laughed off a biased complaint. For every HR file that vanished because the numbers looked clean. Jade added. So what do we do now? Amara answered without pause. We build policies that outlive us. We create systems that don't just reflect our values, but protect them, even when no one is watching. Then came a final surprise. From the screen, Letitia Harmon added one more statement before signing off. If there's one flight I wish I had taken this year, it's Flight 7X198. Not because it went smoothly, but because it proved that turbulence isn't always a threat. Sometimes it's a test. And this flight passed. The cabin applauded, quietly but with reverence, because for the first time ever, a flight had become a blueprint, and the world had taken notice. The applause waned, replaced by the hum of engines and the quiet murmur of passengers realizing they were no longer merely airborne. They were in motion for something much larger. Amara stood at the front of the cabin. She wasn't holding a press statement, no printed document, just her voice and her authority. Tara, she said calmly, let's start building the reform structure. Ready. Policy drafting dashboard is open. We're connected to internal systems and legal team. Jade, standing nearby, asked, You're writing the rules. From the plane, Amara glanced at her and smiled. Where better the damage happened here. So does the recovery. Then Tara spoke again. Incoming message from Starrest's legal counsel. Subject, Clause 9B trigger confirmation. You may want to read this aloud. Amara's brows furrowed slightly. She tapped the display on her tablet. The message opened. From General Counsel StarrestGlobal.com to CEO, Offices StarrestVentures.com. Subject, Claire Nolan. Mid-flight dismissal confirmation. CEO Tate per contract clause. Subsection F. Any crew member, including command-level pilots, may be immediately relieved of duty without recourse if onboard misconduct is observed, recorded, and affirmed by the flight's owner acting as senior authority. This clause was implemented for charter class and private command flights, but has never been invoked. Until now. By formally announcing and recording Claire Nolan's behavior and confirming passenger witness statements, you have satisfied every condition required for clause activation. No reinstatement appeal is possible. Claire Nolan's termination is binding and legally sound. Respectfully, Alan T. Voss, Chief Legal Officer, Starrest Global. A beat of stunned silence followed as Amara finished reading. Sana whispered, That's final. Amara nodded. Yes, it's done. Ryan, the former security lead, muttered from the back. In 20 years, I've never seen that clause used. We all thought it was just legal insurance, never real. It's real now, Amara said. Douglas Merrick, the retired pilot, gave a low whistle. Do you realize what that means? You've just created a precedent. For every airline that has that clause hidden in their back pocket, but never had the courage to use it. Jade added, You used the law the way it was meant to be used, not to protect the system, but to correct it. Amara turned to Tara. Start writing the core mandates, she said. Let's build the framework live. Mandate 1, Tara prompted. Amara spoke clearly. Every complaint received in flight must be logged in dual format, digital and voice. No complaint is permitted to be dismissed unless reviewed by a third-party compliance officer within 48 hours. Logged. Mandate 2. Passenger boarding denials must include verification of factual cause with timestamp crew name and camera record. Logged. Jade whispered to Sana. She's rewriting the operating manual in real time. Luis, the teen future pilot, leaned forward, and we're watching it happen. Then came Tara's voice, again, soft but urgent. Ma'am, another email. Same legal thread. From Alan Voss. You may want to hear this. Amara opened it. From General Counsel starestglobal.com to CEO officestarrestventures.com. Subject Urgent Addendum. Claire Nolan, Ethics History, Amara. Upon full audit, we've uncovered 3 prior flagged ethics memos connected to Claire Nolan. These were documented by internal pilots and crew managers, including Captain K. Salim and Coordinator Nia Ford. All 3 were overruled by former HR Director D. Renshaw. You were never briefed on these despite them involving patterns of language treatment bias and candidate disqualification. This constitutes internal obstruction. Renshaw's failure to escalate these matters constitutes gross negligence. I recommend full legal review of HR chain of custody and initiating a compliance restructuring task force. Alan T. Voss. Amara's voice when she spoke was quieter than before, but sharper. They buried warnings. Not once. Not twice. 3 times. Sana said. So Claire was protected even when others tried to sound the alarm. Douglas added, That's not negligence. That's complicity. Amara looked around the cabin. Then to Tara. Open a new reform pillar. Title it, Internal Accountability Chain. Add this clause. She took a breath. If 3 or more ethical memos are logged against any crew member within a 5-year period and all are dismissed without escalation, the HR chain involved must be independently reviewed. Logged. Would you like to name this the Tate Protocol? Amara paused, then shook her head. No. Call it the Harmon Clause. Letitia Harmon filed one of the first memos. She deserves that credit. Jade nodded slowly. You're not just correcting wrongs. You're elevating those who tried before you. And just then, a quiet ping echoed from Amara's device. A handwritten message. From Jonah Wu, the pilot who had started the draft reform doc. Thank you. I thought no one ever read what I wrote. You proved otherwise. Amara smiled faintly. No, she whispered. You were the first to believe this could change. I just made sure it happened. For the first time in hours, the aircraft's turbulence wasn't emotional, it was literal. A small pocket of air sent the plane gently bouncing. Passengers tensed out of reflex. But this time, no one panicked, because the storm had already passed, and something stronger than gravity now held this flight together. Amara remained near the cockpit, standing beside the flight deck door as Tara's voice returned. Ma'am, cabin status is stable. Internal Ops is routing your reform notes through Compliance HQ now. You'll have full legal review before landing. Amara nodded. Thank you. Luis, the aspiring pilot, watched her from his seat. She doesn't flinch, he whispered to Sana. Even now. Sana smiled. She's flown through worse storms than this. Then a man from row 4 slowly stood. He'd been quiet the entire flight, unassuming, clean-shaven, dressed in a navy business blazer with no logos, no loud watches, just presence. He cleared his throat. Ms. Tate Amara turned. Yes, the man stepped into the aisle. Forgive me for not speaking earlier. I've been watching, listening, and I think it's time I introduce myself. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small ID card, flashing it just briefly enough for Jade, who was closest to see. Her eyes widened. You're Martin Levins. Sana blinked. The venture partner from Axis Equities Douglas muttered. Wait, that Axis. The fund that backs legacy aviation? Martin gave a polite nod. I wanted to see how your airline handled crisis from within. So I flew anonymously. No alerts, no heads up, just a regular first-class seat. He turned toward Amara, and I've never seen what I just witnessed in 20 years of investing. Amara stayed still. You were watching me. I was watching all of you, Martin said. What happened here shouldn't have happened. But how you responded, that was textbook leadership. Not performative. Not corporate. Human. He continued. We've had our doubts about Starist, particularly after those ghosted ethics reports. I was preparing to pull out. Jade inhaled sharply. But now Martin said, if you're willing to institutionalize what you've just enacted, turn this response into protocol, into training, into doctrine, then I'll do more than stay in. He reached back into his satchel and pulled out a signed letter of intent. I'll double our stake. The cabin gasped. Amara blinked. You're serious? Deadly, Martin replied. But only if you commit. Not just to fixing Starist, but to building it as a model. For the entire aviation sector. Tara's voice crackled through Amara's earpiece. Confirmed. Martin Levins, Axis Equities. They hold 8.6% of Starist's shares. Doubling would push them to second-largest stakeholder. Amara looked around the cabin. She saw passengers who had stood up for her, staff who had stayed silent but now leaned forward, witnesses who had seen how one decision not to back down had shifted a system. Then she faced Martin. I don't want to fix Starist to impress shareholders, she said. I want to fix it because the sky belongs to everyone. The premium seat, the captain's chair, the service protocol, none of it should be dictated by perception. Martin nodded slowly. That's the answer I was hoping for. He extended his hand. Shall we fly this right? Amara shook it, and in that handshake, the flight finally found closure. Minutes later, Tara came back on comms, ma'am, landing clearance granted. We've coordinated with press control. No external media will be allowed near the aircraft without prior authorization. Good, Amara said. This isn't about press. It's about policy. Then she picked up the cabin mic gently, without drama, and spoke. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your owner speaking. Thank you for your courage today. You weren't just passengers. You were witnesses. And now, you're part of aviation history. The cabin clapped, not because it was expected, but because it was earned. Sana looked to Jade. Is it strange that I don't want this flight to end? Jade smiled. Then carry it with you. Every flight after this one should feel different. Amara added one final note. When we land, I will begin formal terminations, but also formal hirings. If you witnessed, if you stood up, if you spoke truth, this airline remembers you, and it will be rebuilt by your voices. Douglas leaned back in his chair, tears brimming in his eyes. Finally, he whispered, a flight that arrives not just at a destination, but at a turning point. The runway lights shimmered beneath the descending aircraft like constellations blinking up from the ground. Inside, the passengers sat in near silence, not out of anxiety, but reverence, because no one on board believed they were simply landing. They were arriving. As the wheels touched down with a soft groan of tires against tarmac, the cabin seemed to collectively exhale. The moment the plane's speed slowed, phones buzzed back to life. Notifications exploding, social media, news alerts, messages. But no one reached for them. They were still listening to the weight of what had happened. In the cockpit, Amara watched through the windshield. The private tarmac was flooded in security lights, but lined neatly with black SUVs, branded sedans, and 3 figures in Navy suits standing just beyond the arrival barricade. She tilted her head. "Tara, who's waiting for us?" "You have a federal ethics liaison, a representative from the Department of Transportation," and her voice paused CEOs from 3 major airlines. Amara didn't blink. They came to meet the plane. They requested immediate debrief. Not press, not politics, just guidance. Jade, overhearing, whispered to Sana, "They're not here to punish, they're here to learn." As the plane rolled to a full stop, Amara stood and turned to the cabin one last time before the door opened. "Before you disembark, let me say this. What happened today wasn't theater. It wasn't a PR stunt. It was a system breaking in front of you and being rebuilt before wheels down." She let the silence hang. "You're not just passengers of Flight 7X198. You're the first witnesses of the new standard." Douglas Merrick, the retired pilot, stood and saluted. "I've waited 30 years for someone to say that out loud." Jade nodded. History doesn't get written by silence. Then the forward cabin door unlatched with a heavy click. Light from the terminal poured in, and standing at the base of the mobile staircase were the visitors Tara had described. 3 CEOs in tailored coats, 1 federal rep holding a thick compliance binder, and a middle-aged black woman in a duty lapel badge arms folded with a half smile that said everything. Amara walked down the stairs slowly, not as a celebrity, but as a commander of consequence. As she reached the tarmac, the DOT representative stepped forward first. "Ms. Tate," she said, "I'm Camille Everett, Federal Ethics Division. I want to be very clear, this is not an investigation." Amara raised an eyebrow. Camille smiled. "It's a consultation." Behind her, the 3 airline CEOs exchanged glances, one of them stepping forward. "We watched the flight unfold," he said. "Everything from the override to the reform clauses, the digital transparency suite, the in-air policy drafting. It's revolutionary." Amara didn't gloat. It was necessary. Another CEO nodded. "We don't have systems like that. We should. We want to know how you built it and how fast we can implement it." Camille handed Amara a leather folder. "Inside are recommendations from the FL to present your model as a case study. With your permission, we'd like to propose your flight as a training simulation nationwide." Sana and Jade had just stepped onto the stairs behind her, overhearing everything. Sana whispered, "She didn't just change her airline. She's about to change them all." Then came the surprise. From the last car on the tarmac emerged a woman in a gray trench coat. No media badge, no assistant. She walked slowly toward Amara and extended her hand. "I'm Bernice Tang," she said. "I work for the Japanese Civil Aviation Bureau." Amara blinked. "You're international. I was in DC for the Global Standards Summit. When your flight went viral, I chartered a car straight here." She smiled faintly. "We've had our own battles, but never seen a CEO intervene live on flight with policy integrity and witness empowerment. I came to ask a simple question." Amara stood still. "How did you prepare your system for this?" Amara looked toward the aircraft, then back at Bernice. "I didn't prepare the system," she said. "I built it. Because I was the girl denied boarding the intern passed over the exec, mistaken for a janitor. I didn't wait for the industry to change." She paused. "I forced it. Bernice smiled. Then perhaps the world is ready for your flight plan. The DOT rep nodded. Let's make Flight 7X198 more than a news story. Let's make it federal doctrine. Amara didn't answer with words. She handed Tara a gesture through her mic. Tara prepped the reform package. Full presentation mode. Already loading, Tara replied. And on the tarmac, surrounded by CEOs, federal agents, international observers, and witnesses, Amara Tate stood not as a CEO who fired a crew, but as the architect of an airborne revolution. The impromptu summit had moved into a glass-lined conference suite just off the private terminal. Passengers who had remained behind now joined federal observers, airline CEOs, and internal Starist officers, forming a circle that felt part courtroom, part classroom, part quiet reckoning. Amara stood at the center, not behind a podium, not elevated on a platform, just present, commanding, human. Tara's voice came through her earpiece. Presentation uploaded. You're connected to every active operations hub, domestic and international. The room is mic'd. The floor is yours. Amara looked around. She saw powerful people who just hours ago might have dismissed her in the same way Claire had. Now they leaned forward, listening. I'm not here to humiliate my industry, she began. I'm here to heal it. But healing starts with truth. And for far too long, we've mistaken decorum for justice and protocol for fairness. She tapped her tablet. Behind her, a screen lit up with the header. The Flight That Reset the Sky. Starist Reform Framework. By Nuayo. Gasps whispered around the room. Jade whispered to Sana. She named it after the flight. Amara continued. This framework is not theory. It is tested. Under pressure. Under humiliation. Under fire. And it worked. She scrolled through the first principles. Dual format complaint logging, written psa-verbal. Witness-verified escalation protocols. Owner override pathways with built-in checks. Bias flag metadata system tied to performance reviews. Live audit triggers via anonymous input during flight. Douglas Merrick. The retired pilot raised his hand. This isn't just a reform, it's a failsafe. Amara nodded. Exactly. We've been asking, what if bias slips through? What if someone is overlooked? The question should be, how do we build systems where they can't be erased? Then came the moment no one expected. From the opposite side of the room, a woman stood, elegantly dressed, hair pinned tight. She adjusted her name badge, which read Victoria Lang, CEO, North Star Airways. She faced the room and then faced Amara directly. I've run one of the oldest carriers in this country for 15 years, she said. And I'll admit I've resisted change. Equity policies felt cosmetic, PR-driven, soft. Jade tensed. Sana whispered, What's she doing? Victoria took a breath. But what you built? Today, at 38,000 feet, in real time, without losing your dignity, that's the standard now. She stepped forward. I'm not just here to observe. I'm here to ask you, Amara Tate, publicly. Will you serve as the inaugural advisor to North Star's new Global DEI Oversight Board with full power to implement your reform protocol tailored to our fleet? The room went utterly silent. Tara's voice cracked in Amara's ear. North Star just made this official. If you accept, it will be the first cross-carrier leadership bridge based entirely on a passenger-activated equity model. Amara didn't respond right away. Instead, she looked around the room. Eyes met hers, some hopeful, some nervous, all alert. Then she turned to Victoria. I accept. The room burst into applause, but not polite applause. Grounded. A recognition of paradigm shift. Douglas chuckled softly. We've gone from firing a captain to redrawing an industry. Camille Everett from the Department of Transportation raised a hand. "Ms. Tate, are you prepared to release this framework for public review?" "I already did," Amara said. "Every passenger on that flight now holds part of it. Their testimony is live. Their voices are part of this blueprint." She tapped again. A quote appeared on the screen behind her. "The sky is for everyone. Let our systems finally act like it." Victoria stepped forward once more. "If North Star follows your blueprint, will you stand beside us when the backlash comes?" Amara didn't hesitate. "I've been standing through backlash my whole life. This time I'll be standing with systems built to withstand it." Then Tara added softly through the earpiece, "One more thing, ma'am. 5 airlines have already requested Starist's reform deck. Requests from Japan, Brazil, Canada, France, and Kenya. This isn't just national anymore." Amara closed her eyes for half a second. Not to escape, to steady the future. Because this was no longer about one woman, or one crew, or one bad flight. This was about skies rewritten, and a system that would never fly the same again. As applause faded and the summit room shifted toward strategy talks, Tara's voice crackled again in Amara's ear, this time lower tighter. "Amara, I found something. It's not in any official archive. It came from a whistleblower log routed through our shadow compliance mailbox 3 years ago. The file was buried, labeled as corrupt." Amara walked toward a quiet corner away from the crowd. "What kind of file audio?" "From a crew comm system on Flight 68 Tutufs, the one Claire captained 6 months before Starist acquired her division." Amara paused. "Play it." A soft click. Then a familiar voice, cold sharp, unmistakably. "Claire Nolan. He's not on the primary manifest good. Bump him. Say there was a security issue. Do it discreetly." Another voice, male tentative. "But Captain, his ID checks out. He's traveling with a government contractor badge." Claire snapped back. "I don't care. His kind always carry badges. Make him wait. You'll be doing first class a favor." Amara's spine stiffened. Timestamp June 19th, 2023. 24 hours before we completed the Charter One merger. The passenger she referred to was later rerouted, missed a defense meeting, and filed a claim that vanished inside Legacy HR. Amara inhaled slowly, controlled, contained. But beneath it, fury flowed. This wasn't about rudeness or protocol. She was executing personal gatekeeping at scale, Tara added. Amara turned to Camille Everett, the federal ethics official. "I need your authority to process a whistleblower file we just recovered." Camille blinked, then nodded. "Is it criminal in nature?" Amara played the clip again. As Claire's voice echoed once more, "His kind always carry badges." The room stilled. Jade, sitting nearby, whispered, "She was targeting by race." Douglas shook his head. Not just targeting. She was embedding bias into operations. Camille walked to her satchel, pulled out a sealed folder marked Emergency Action, Flight Integrity, and opened a trifold document. Amara Tate, as Starist's acting owner and CEO. "Do you consent to submit this audio file as formal federal evidence of systemic misconduct within Airline Command?" Amara nodded once. "I do." Camille raised her hand, signaling a federal observer. "Then, by mandate 12-204B of the Aviation Ethics Act, we are opening an active investigation into Claire Nolan's tenure decision logs and bypassed manifest records." The observer approached with a mobile device and a biometric scanner. Camille placed her thumb. The file was uploaded, logged, time-stamped, encrypted. Investigation ID 7X18 CE Nolan is now live. Amara turned back to Tara. "Anything else buried?" "We're running audits now, flagging any crew member connected to that flight. So far, Lily Marsh shows 3 matches. Brian Holt shows 2 passive approvals. Sana, watching nearby, asked quietly, "What happens to them now?" Amara responded without drama. They face what they denied others scrutiny. Victoria Lang of North Star, still in the room, leaned in. If that file went missing during merger processing, that means someone helped hide it. Camille nodded. And if so, there will be charges: obstruction, endangerment, fraud. Jade looked at Amara. You pulled back the curtain. Now the whole system has to answer. But then came one more twist. A call came in direct to Camille's agency line. She put it on speaker. A man's voice, official and cautious. "This is Colonel Desmond Hart, Joint Aviation Security Liaison. We've received confirmation that the passenger Claire Nolan removed on Flight 6812 was a subcontracted intelligence analyst. He had diplomatic priority boarding clearance. His forced delay triggered a 3-day security lapse in our counter-surveillance schedule." Camille's eyes widened. "Are you suggesting her action endangered national protocol?" "We're not suggesting," Hart said. "We're declaring. We're formally requesting custody of the Nolan case once FAA completes ethics review." The room turned electric. Douglas exhaled. She didn't just discriminate. She compromised national operations. Amara's expression didn't change, because this wasn't surprise anymore. It was confirmation. "Tara," she said. "Yes, draft a policy. Title, Legacy Reckoning Clause. Any crew member with prior complaints flagged in acquisition must be reviewed under bias retroactive scans, and all ghosted reports must be routed through third-party audit firms. Logged. Initiating partner outreach now." Camille looked at Amara with something rare in federal officials' admiration. You didn't just expose a crew. You exposed a mechanism. Amara looked back at her passengers, at the crew, at her fellow CEOs, and said quietly, "No one boards quietly again." The air outside the terminal had grown cooler. It was 3:47 a.m., and the tarmac still pulsed with faint light. Cameras remained banned. Reporters kept at bay. But within the corridors of power, tectonic plates were shifting. Amara stood alone now, at the edge of a terminal balcony, eyes fixed on the city skyline breaking into blue. Behind her, the whirlwind of the past 12 hours still churned federal investigators cross-referencing manifest anomalies, airline executives requesting early access to the reform blueprint and passengers. Some asleep, some still waiting to shake her hand. Her phone vibrated. A private message. From a name she hadn't seen in years, Mason Hill. One of the first charter operations interns Starrist had absorbed during the merger. Fired quietly after 6 months. No HR review. No explanation. He had never complained. Until now. The message read, "Hi, Ms. Tate. You don't know me personally, but I knew Claire. I was on the April 2023 operations call when she said, 'We need to start flagging profiles that feel wrong. If they don't match the manifest picture, we stall until cleared, especially the darker ones.' I recorded the call. I've never had the courage to share it until tonight." Amara's breath caught. Another message followed with a link. Attached audio file. OP criteria, April 23.mp3. She plugged in her earpiece, clicked play, and there it was, clear as if she stood in the room. Claire Nolan's voice, firm, unrepentant. "It's about optics, not proof. If they don't look like they belong in first, we make it hard to stay. That way the cabin feels protected even if we never say it." A male voice chimed in. "Isn't that a little risky?" "Not if it's framed as caution," Claire replied. "You'll be surprised how easy it is to make suspicion look like safety." Amara pressed stop. She stood motionless. Not out of shock, she had seen this rot before. Felt it. Navigated it. But now, she had it recorded. Documented. Unspinnable. Undeniable. Tara's voice entered her earpiece. "Ma'am, you need to hear this." Amara nodded. "Go ahead." 3 more whistleblowers came forward, including a former trainer from Claire's onboarding sessions. All confirmed she introduced an unofficial seat profile rubric ranking passengers by perceived affluence posture, tone of voice, and skin tone. One of them has printed copies. Amara turned away from the skyline and walked slowly back toward the conference suite. The sunrise would wait. The reckoning wouldn't. Inside, Camille Everett was reviewing new data logs. Jade sat nearby, working on a public summary with 2 ethics observers. Sana helped distribute bottled water to remaining passengers still answering compliance surveys voluntarily. Douglas Merrick rose when Amara entered. "You okay?" he asked. "No," she replied honestly. "But I'm clear." She turned to Camille. "We have an audio admission. A policy designed to profile passengers by race wrapped in the language of safety. This isn't a rogue attitude. It was a codified strategy." Camille didn't flinch. "Then it becomes criminal," she said. "This is no longer an ethics breach. This is federal discrimination, workplace misconduct, civil rights violation, and systemic fraud. We'll activate full cross-agency investigation." Jade asked. "How far does this go?" Amara responded softly. "Farther than any of us thought. But now, we don't stop." Just then, Tara's voice returned. "Media control has held. No leaks. We still dictate the timeline. If we want to release a public statement, I recommend sunrise." Sana added, "A new day. A clean one." Amara nodded. "Draft it." Jade stood beside her. "What will you say?" Amara stared into the overhead lights for a moment, then answered. "We thought the sky belonged to those with the right tickets right, accents right looks. But tonight proved that the sky listens to those who refuse to be moved even when they're standing alone." She paused. "And now we're never standing alone again." Douglas leaned in. "What you did wasn't just justice. It was design. You designed a world where equity doesn't need to shout." Amara turned back to Tara. "Send the statement, and title it Flight 7X198, Where Power Finally Sat Down. Sending now." As the email launched, Amara walked toward the remaining passengers and spoke from her core. "If you watched me fight, it's only because you made space to witness it. If you spoke up, it's because your silence could have cost someone their dignity." She looked to Sana. "You stayed." She looked to Douglas. "You remembered." She looked to Jade. "You resisted." And then she said something that carried more than policy. It carried future. This was not the story of a black woman removed. This was the story of a system finally held accountable by the very people it thought were invisible. She turned back to Camille. "I'm ready for whatever's next." 3 months later, the name Flight 7X108 was no longer just a flight number. It had become a case study, a watchword, and for many a standard. Universities taught it. Government hearings cited it. And airlines, even the most reluctant ones, began rewriting their crew training based on one premise. Dignity is not optional at altitude. Amara Tate stood once again at the same private terminal where it all began. But this time, she wasn't boarding. She was launching. Behind her, a row of banners flanked the stage. Starist Ventures, the Horizon Institute, Flight Rights Foundation. A crowd of aviation leaders, journalists, passengers from that fateful flight, and 100 new recruits in uniform stood waiting. Jade was among them. So was Sana, and so was Douglas, now officially appointed honorary advisor to the Flight Equity Review Board. Amara stepped up to the microphone. "When I boarded Flight 7X198, she began, I wore no badge, no title. I carried no press kit, no camera crew. just a valid seat and a quiet conviction. The crowd leaned in. But in that cabin, bias didn't ask for credentials. It assumed absence. It assumed erasure. And when it met resistance, it mistook it for arrogance. She paused. What it found instead was accountability. Applause rippled, then settled. Today, we dedicate the launch of the SkySight Institute, the first global equity and ethics academy for aviation professionals. Here, crew training includes not just safety service and structure, but sovereignty of the soul. A banner dropped behind her, revealing the Institute's motto, "The sky sees everything. We teach it to listen." Jade, filming the moment, whispered to Sana, "She's not just changing the industry, she's changing how we define who belongs." Amara continued, "Every graduate of this institute will carry with them not just a license to fly, but a responsibility to uplift, to notice, to never unsee again." Tara, now head of global compliance at Starist, stepped forward with a tablet. "Would you like to announce the curriculum?" Ms. Amara smiled. "Let's." On screen, the first 3 core courses appeared. Human First Response, Bias, Intervention in Cabin Culture, Passenger Empowerment Protocols. But the crowd wasn't prepared for the 4th. Witness Testimony Labs, taught by passengers from Flight 7X198. A moment of stunned silence, then wild applause. Because this wasn't just about rebuilding an airline. It was about returning power to the people who board it. Later that day, Amara sat with Douglas, Jade, and Sana on a shaded bench overlooking the tarmac. "You still think skies can be fair?" Jade asked. Amara looked toward the planes taking off in the distance. "They already are. We just needed to catch up." Douglas smiled. "You know, in all my years of flying, we were taught how to handle turbulence, but never how to handle truth. Until now." Sana leaned in. "Do you think they'll remember what you did that night?" Amara looked at her with quiet fire. "No. I hope they remember what we built after, because that's the part that can't be undone." A final notification buzzed on Amara's phone. A headline, "Starist SkySight Institute receives UNESCO Award for Global Education Innovation." She read it once, then turned to her friends. It's just the beginning. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to catch more gripping stories like this. Real victories, quiet revolutions, and heroes who rise in unexpected places. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.